Here's Todd Friel to try to convince someone that Christianity is true with 5 gotcha questions.
So let me try to reason with you, all right? I think that there are questions that we human beings ask, rightly so, and I think every philosophy, even economic systems, and certainly religions try to answer. And here's the questions, you've heard them. Where do we come from?
I came from my parents, who came from billions of years of ancestry that traces back to self-replicating molecules, which are made of mass that has never not existed and thus needs no explanation.
Why are we here?
Isn't that the same question? I guess maybe Todd isn't asking why are we here in the sense of what caused us to be here, but rather in the sense of what is our purpose for being here. This, of course, presupposes that there is a purpose in the first place. It presupposes that there is a conscious entity who deliberately created us.
How are we supposed to live? What do I do with the shame, the guilt, the purposelessness that I feel?
What do you mean, what do I do with them? Do you mean, how do I get rid of them? Well, hopefully by righting your wrongs, and not by imagining an all-powerful being to absolve you. You can even make a purpose out of righting your wrongs and solve your purposelessness problem at the same time.
Where am I going when I die?
Why do you assume you go anywhere when you die? Even the earliest Christians didn't seem to think you necessarily went anywhere when you die. The earliest Christians were Jews, and it's actually ambiguous as to whether or to what degree Judaism says there's an afterlife. Jews in Jesus' time believed that when you die, you are basically sleeping until Judgment Day, when all good people will be raised from their graves, and all bad people will just stay permanently unconscious. Nobody really goes anywhere. Everyone stays on Earth.
So I would suggest to you that a religious system must answer all 5 of those, not independently, but coherently.
Why would a religious system have to answer any of them? Even if a religion does answer them all and does so coherently, by which I guess Todd means all at once, that doesn't mean that such a religion is true. Also, if a religion has to operate under the assumption that we go somewhere when we die, Christianity, at least as Jesus' original followers practiced it, doesn't do that.
Yeah.
They can't contradict, they can't fall short. It's
What
got
are
to
the
answer all.
questions again? What are they?
Where'd I come from?
Yeah.
Why am I here? How am I supposed to live? How do I deal with my foreboding of death? And where am I going when I die?
Yeah.
All right? So if I find the system that coherently answers all 5 of those questions in a holistic way, my search is done.
Right.
I'm done. If you're, for instance, if you're looking for the lottery ticket, you know what the lottery ticket numbers are. You start going looking through lottery tickets. Once you find the right one, do you keep looking?
I don't think that's how the lottery works. It's not like they give you the winning number first and you just go looking through lottery tickets until you find a number that matches. Also, Todd hasn't really made a case for these questions to be the best questions to ask when evaluating religions. He just asserts that religions have to answer them to be any good. He makes no argument to that effect.
No.
Okay. So if you find the system that explains these 5 questions, your search for truth is over, all right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we can answer those 5 questions consistently and holistically through the person of Jesus Christ.
Right.
Bible says, here's where you came from, Matt. You were woven together in your mother's womb by God himself. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And you know how I know that? Information systems. Ha ha!
Computers, okay.
Okay, this microphone.
Yeah.
Did it happen by itself? No. If I sat here and told you it happened over millions of years, you'd go, you're an idiot. Somebody made it. I don't see the microphone maker. I know there's a microphone maker because I've got a microphone.
Yeah.
Computers, they've got to be programmed. They don't happen by themselves. You're made by God.
Is God himself completely devoid of information and complexity? If God can be complex and full of information but exist on his own, why can't anything else? Why assume that the default state of reality is chaos and that non-randomness, which is what information is, has to be deliberately imposed?
Right.
I think that's externally and internally verifiable. It makes sense with what I observe, and it feels right that I'm actually made by God because I'm different than rocks and sidewalks and dogs.
So human beings need to have a maker, but rocks, dogs, and sidewalks don't?
Okay, so you're made by God. What are you doing here? What's the point? Without God, there is no point.
You can make up your own point. Why is that such a scary prospect? Why do apologists cite the fact that if there's no God, there's nothing imposing any goals upon us, as though that's something bleak and terrible?
You can make all the money you want, but you're going to die,
Right.
and somebody's going to get all your stuff.
Well, that can be a purpose right there. Make a lot of money and leave it to an orphanage or something when you die. Why is Todd talking about that like it's scary or depressing?
Right.
And you're done. You're worm food. It's
Right.
bleak, it's nihilistic, and that does not settle well with us.
It sits well with me. I don't see the prospect of eternal existence as necessarily desirable even if there is a heaven. And even if the prospect that my existence is finite didn't sit well with me, my feelings on the matter have absolutely nothing to do with whether it is true or not.
Because we sense there's more to life.
I don't sense there's more to life. And what do you mean by sense? Sounds like feels over reals if you ask me.
Right.
You are made by God for God, to live for the benevolent being who's all-powerful and almighty.
What does living for him mean, and why would I want that? I sometimes hear that God made us to glorify him. That doesn't sound very interesting to me. Apologists say that as though it must inherently get me excited. It doesn't.
And that means when you get a job in information systems, you're not just doing computer stuff and teaching people. You're actually working for God by helping his other children get smarter.
Why do they need to get smarter in order to glorify him? That doesn't sound like a job that requires an advanced degree.
So you're serving God. Okay, so there's those two answered. How are you supposed to live? Well, you can make up the rules, or you can ask yourself the question, has God spoken? And I think the answer is yes. How do I know? Because you and I are speaking. And I don't think the creation would be greater than the creator. So God is a communicative God, and he's spoken to us.
What? Creators don't have to be greater than their creations. They don't have to have all of the abilities that their creations do. People create computers to be greater in their ability to do calculations than people are. They create vehicles that are greater in speed and machines that are physically stronger. Also, even if our ability to speak means that God must also have that ability, which is a non sequitur, that isn't proof that he used that ability to communicate with us.
Through a book called the Bible. Now you got to dig into it and see if it's accurate and verifiable, but
It's neither of those things, by the way.
for the sake of this conversation, let's just say your rule book for living is God's rules, the Bible. We can dive into that later if you choose, but then this whole issue about that nagging feeling. Now I don't care to know the details of your life, but you intimated that living a Christian system is better because you don't have those feelings of doing things on the weekend that maybe cause guilt. Christianity deals with the guilt and shame problem.
Yeah, but it deals with it by using a scapegoat. It deals with it by using the pointless idea of penal substitution. It teaches that we are absolved of our wrongdoings because an innocent person took our punishment for us. If this is such a just principle, why do we not apply it in any of our earthly penal systems? Why do we not allow people to serve the sentences of others?
Yeah.
Jesus takes your guilt and shame. You can't make yourself right. You need intervention. God came to earth to live the perfect life you couldn't, to be beaten and bruised and crucified on your behalf, taking the wrath of God on himself so that you, Matt, could be forgiven and you could have a cleansed conscience.
I don't know. The idea that someone innocent took the punishment that I deserved doesn't really cleanse my conscience very well. If I believed it, it would make me feel significantly more guilty.
Which means when you die, you're going to go to be with your maker.
Why would I want that? Even if there is a supernatural maker, I'm not convinced that I would get along with him and enjoy spending eternity with him.
Not judged by your maker and cast into hell, but you will get to be with him because of what Jesus did. So now these 5 questions are answered harmoniously. They make sense.
I don't know. The idea of a timeless, spaceless, disembodied mind that allows my mind to become disembodied after I die and be with him in some other plane of existence because he sacrificed himself to appease himself for things I did to offend him seems to me to raise more questions than it answers.
That is why I believe that Christianity is true, and I believe that Jesus was telling the truth, because none of these other systems can do all of these things for me.
But merely doing all these things doesn't demonstrate truth. The fact that they give you comfort and make you feel absolved of your sins and less afraid of death have no bearing whatsoever on truth. The fact that a religion has one answer to all of these questions at once has no bearing on whether that answer is true.
Right.
Nobody can tell you you're going to be completely forgiven, that God is going to accept you into his kingdom.
That's because nobody can establish the reality of these things in the first place.
You can't know that with any other system but Christianity, and that's why when Christ said, I am the way, the truth, Nobody comes unto the Father but by me. He was not lying.
How does that follow? Jesus wasn't lying because nobody was saying the same things he said? What does that have to do with whether or not what Jesus said was true?
And that's also, maybe you remember this verse. He said, come unto me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden. He was talking about your sin burden, trying to keep the rules, trying to clean yourself up and be an upstanding citizen. Come unto me, I'll give you rest. My yoke is easy. My burden is light, because he takes it all away. And he grants you forgiveness. And now I have something called purpose. Now I am living for the one who died for me joyfully and happily, because he's the best being in the universe.
Do you actually have an argument for that, or do you expect me to take it as axiomatic? To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.